31st OpenJ9 community call. As always, please remember to put your name and affiliation on the agenda just so we know who's been attending the calls. And then I will pause here for a chance for people to bring up any topics that they want to add to the agenda. We are still looking for more lightning talks, so if somebody has a lightning talk they'd like to give to the OpenJ9 community, please volunteer. Either add yourself to the agenda here or send me a note on Slack and we'll work something out. Take a look at the recent user-raised issues. Since the last meeting, the only new one that's come in was raised by me, and that was a enhancement request for the shared classes cache, where verbose messages get printed to standard error instead of to a file, and that can be a nuisance for people as they get intermixed with their existing output. So something to think about is whether we can add that an option to write those to a file right off the bat. Is there anything else in this list of user-raised issues that we should tackle now, or that needs some discussion? Okay. We'll jump back to the agenda. Reminder again about help wanted issues. These are a good way to help onboard people into the project, so please do leave those around for people and create them as you find good entry tasks so that we can get more people onboarded into helping with OpenJ9. We'll take a look at the download metrics now. If we take a look at the download stats from Adopt, we see that they've leveled off over the past few days for all implementations. If we limit that just to OpenJ9, we see downloads peaked a couple of days or yesterday. We're down a little bit so far today, but still fairly high. EK16 has not been a lot of what we're seeing in the download numbers. The majority continues to be 11 and 8, sort of as we'd expect. And if we throw the hotspot numbers on there as well, so I make them visible, we see 8 is a fair amount of their downloads. 11 again is dominating. And JDK16 is a small amount. So not terribly unexpected that 11 is still the dominant thing being downloaded. Jumping back to our agenda, we'll take a look at the 0.26 release that's coming up. This is our next quarterly release. We're coming up on the milestone 2 date of April 5th. So before we jump into that, let's take a look at what items we still have left in our milestone plan. See that we have 14 items here. Some of these look like some of the same issues that have been moving forward for a while. I guess the only one labeled a blocker is this illegal access regression, which there's a fair bit of discussion going on already, so this is being looked at. Is there anything in this list anyone wants to call out or wants to discuss now? And just a reminder that for anything that isn't going to close out before the M2 build early next week, we probably should be looking at moving out of this plan. So if there's an item in here related to something you're working on or something you own, and it's not going to close this week, consider moving it out so that we're clear that it's not going to make the release. Is there anything else we should discuss around the 0.26 release? Pete, anything you want to call out around the upcoming M2 builds?
Uh, this weekend we'll be doing the testing, and then we'll set the tags and request the builds on Monday. I believe, even though it's a holiday, Andrew has volunteered to start them.
I can do that, yes. Yeah, if you just ping me the usual way, I can take them off at least.
I was hoping we do have a regression that we're working on fixing, so I'm hoping that it would get fixed in time. Be also interesting to know if the JIT team is planning on submitting any more changes, but do we have the right people on the call?
I don't think so. I don't see Marius. I don't see Daryl.
Maybe I'll connect with Daryl offline and see if he's planning to put anything else in. Otherwise, we can just move the rest of those issues out. We might put in some DDR changes, but I don't know that that's important for Milestone 2. So just that one blocker issue.
Yeah, and there's been some discussion with myself and Toby and Hung looking at that.
Yeah. So I guess one question is, if we can't get it resolved this week, should we hold up Milestone 2 for it? Although I think I'd have to double check. Possibly Milestone 1 has the same issue. It's not that we advertise these builds, and they're probably not well tested by anybody outside of Adopt.
I don't think we need to hold up M2 for it. I would hope that when I look at the changes, I think we can probably, not a nice solution, but we can probably work around it by using different sets of queries between the two different API paths so that we match the reference implementation behavior there. It's not entirely clear that the reference implementation is consistent either, so there may be a bug on their side as well. So we'll need to follow up with them, but that can happen independently of the workaround we'll need to introduce. In terms
So
of CMake, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, other than that, I don't expect there's going to be a whole lot going in. We should be pretty much done, except for getting the security updates when the GA occurs and doing the final builds.
All right. In terms of the CMake performance, we had discussed that there was a minor regression in on JDK8, and we were waiting on profiles. Have those profiles been gotten yet?
I don't see Sharon on, but I did see an update that she had done something to get profiles. I don't remember the full details, though.
Wondering if that regression is something that we expect to be addressed before this release, given the time frame. It doesn't sound like it.
Yeah, possibly not. We do still have a few more weeks before GA, so if we do come up with something, we can evaluate the risk. Is
there anything else that we should talk about around the 0.26 release? Then do we have an update around Adopt?
Yeah, I've just put those notes in fresh. So just a few items. I guess you've already mentioned Andrew Leonard will be the contact for the M2 build. In terms of Eclipse transition, more repos are now moved under the Adoptium org. Some of them will have been renamed. So if it used to be called OpenJDK-support, it is now renamed to Adoptium-support. Most of our references to OpenJDK have been removed in the renaming. The mirror scripts is another repo that has moved over. And we're over the halfway mark now, so things seem to be going smoothly, but there are still a couple of critical repos to move. I think we tried to merge in a change for the test pipelines recently that uses a parameter separator plugin. Did not realize that the OpenJ9 Jenkins server didn't have that plugin. Thanks Adam for putting the request into Jiro for adding that. Once it's in, hoping someone will let me know in the testing channel so we can reapply that PR that uses that plugin. And then finally, we have probably around 35 contributors that have just joined the project in the last day or two, making many contributions to the test repos. These are good first issue contributions to begin with, but if you see any strange behavior at the OpenJ9 Jenkins server that we haven't predicted, please let me know. I'll be monitoring those closely, and if there is a question mark around the PR, I will run grinders at the OpenJ9 Jenkins server as well before we merge them, but if you can give quick alerts, that will be great. I think that's all I have for now.
Shelley, did I hear that right? 35 new contributors?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We hadn't expected that number. We were told to expect around 10. So I'm frantically creating new good first issues. But yeah, it's a good problem to have.
Any other questions or comments for the Adopt update? Okay. Then
Before we move on, I found Sharon's issue. So she does have the profiles, but she didn't have access to the tool. She needs to look at the profiles. So she's requested access, and we'll take a look at the profiles once she's granted the access.
There's no update for infrastructure, so any other business section, checking if Babneet's on. I don't see Babneet, so don't think there's an update here for the method handles work. Evan, do you have an update for where we're at with CMake?
Yeah, so turns out we have to hit a block with the ZOS stuff because, as it turns out, the CMake build is using XLC rather than the C89 front end. Differences in the arms, it turns out that we are picking up the system zlib rather than our own zlib. So that's causing us some issues right now, which I was resolving, but then I seem to have broken my development machine. So I put feelers out there to try and get that rebooted and figure out what's going on there. But otherwise, it seems like we've gotten through the worst of it.
Okay. That's great to hear. Do you have a timeline when you think that'll be ready to merge and we can close this issue out?
I mean, it depends on when I get the dev machine up, but yeah, I'm going to say a week.
Okay. Good. Right. Don't see Marius, so no update for the element operator discussions. Just awareness that the next microjit meeting will be April 8th. This item was from me just to thank you for the help from the GC team to look at the micrometer metrics plugin and adding support for OpenJ9's GC policies there. Looks like I've jumped through the necessary hoops and should be able to get that merged soon if it hasn't been already. So, for help with that. In terms of rescheduling this call, if I look at the doodle poll, the one that has the highest number of acceptability is the Tuesday 10 to 11. Now, when we talked about that previously, we had said that the call often runs no more than half an hour, and so it may make more sense to start it at 10:30 to avoid a conflict with an IBM internal call and try to time box ourselves to a half an hour at most. So I think that's what I'd like to propose, is that we move this call to Tuesdays at 10:30, and I'll just pause here and see if there's any strong objections to that. I'm not hearing any, so I will go ahead and reschedule this for Tuesdays at 10:30, and hopefully that works out well with enough people's schedules, and seems to fit the most of the feedback we've gotten on that poll. And we'll play things by ear from there. If there's problems, please reach out to me, and we'll see what we can do to accommodate things.
So start on next week's call?
Yeah, we'll start next week on Tuesday.
Okay, thanks.
Is there an update on moving to the top level GitHub org?
I created the CQ, but I see it has a reply from Mikhail because I had said we didn't want to share minutes, but I equally note that it's also for us to be able to run many runners in in parallel. So he was correcting me in terms of saying that we don't share those 2,000 minutes, but I believe we still will want to move the build OpenJ9 GitHub action to that org because there are other restrictions around use of runners that we would want to avoid. So I guess I need to reply in the CQ because he's probably just waiting for someone to say, yes, we still want to proceed. Yeah, and the CQ is there. Okay.
Yeah, so otherwise we're waiting till after the 0.26 release, and then I think we should start requesting other repos to move and just move them all.
Yeah. Yeah, there are definitely benefits. And then that way, if we do want to augment the plan for OpenJ9 to increase the runner, like to even go up to the enterprise plan, it's possible because you're in your own org, where it wouldn't be possible, I think, if you're sharing an org. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I'll take the action to reply in that CQ. Hopefully we can get things rolling.
Okay, sounds good. Peter, I see you have a comment here about disk usage.
Yeah, it seemed like our disk usage was continuing to go down. I was just going to bring up today's number. Maybe it's leveled off. It was down to 76, but it came back up to 77. I think it's reasonable to expect it's going to go down because of the mixed ref builds taking less space than having two builds for compressed and large heap. Anyway, so I was thinking, since we have this unused space, we could increase the number of days we're keeping builds and artifacts. I think right now it's back up to 35, and we could go 40 or 45.
I can set it to 40 if you want.
Sure, let's try that and see.
Is there any other business that we should discuss today?
I'll just mention what's happened with the OpenJ9 Slack. Last week, somebody joined Slack and installed an app because we had wide open permissions for anyone to do that. So I've changed the permissions so only the admins can install an app, and I we had permission so that people could request to install an app, but I've just turned that off because today somebody else joined and tried to install a number of different apps, which we denied. But from now on, we shouldn't get any of those requests. So if somebody legitimately wants to install an app, you'll have to just ask on the general channel or something on Slack.
Pete for taking that on and chasing down how to fix the permissions there. Point out again that the next call will be on Tuesday, April the 6th at 10:30. I guess we'll chat again for our next one of these then. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Yeah, thanks. Bye.